Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this gorgeous tulip stitch blanket. You are going to love making this tulip stitch blanket so much. It only has one row of single crochet, so the rest is much faster. And also it's finished with a really sweet scalloped edge. Now this is optional, you don't have to do the scalloped edge, but it does really finish off the side of that tulip stitch blanket, and it just adds a lovely little finished detail. There is a written pattern available over on my website, secretyarnery.com. If you want to follow along with the written pattern, you don't have to worry about being able to read a pattern. All of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. The finished size of my blanket is 37 inches by 33 inches, which is 94 centimeters by 84 centimeters. You'll need green for your leaves, and you'll need a color for your tulips, whichever color you like. You could do all of your tulips in one color. You don't have to change colors like I have. And you will also need a neutral color for in between your rows of tulips. Usually it's white, but you could use any neutral yarn that you have on hand. You will need about 100 grams of green, 200 grams for your tulips, and 400 grams of your neutral color. For my tulip stitch blanket, I'm using 7 colors of this 4-weight worsted acrylic. This is Savor from Ice Yarns, and I will link these colors in the description box down below if you want to use the same colors that I am. I will also be using a 6mm crochet hook. You will need a pair of scissors and a needle for sewing in your ends. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back to where you left off, and let's get started. To make your tulip stitch blanket, we're just going to start by making a chain. And for your chain, I'm going to be using a larger size crochet hook. So you can use one size larger or 1mm larger. This is a 6.5, but you could also use a 7. So make your slip knot any which way you normally do. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook. And chain sets of 3. So for my blanket, I chained 114 plus 2. But you could chain any multiple of 3. So how to do that? You just chain 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, until your chain is the width that you want your blanket to be. Or just keep going and chain 114. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to be doing a smaller sample. So go ahead, pause the video, and get your chain made. After you've chained your multiple of 3, and the chain is the width you want your blanket to be, go ahead and chain 2 more. 1 and 2. Now take out that larger hook and go to your usual hook that you're going to be using. So I'm using a 6mm for my blanket. And we're going to go into the back loops. You can work into the front of your chain also. It doesn't really matter. We're going to be covering up the edge of our blanket with a border anyway. But just look for your back loops. So the first one is right underneath the working yarn, right there. We're going to go into the second back loop right here. So just pop your hook in. We're going to do 1 row of single crochet. So slide your hook into the second chain and make 1 single crochet. And 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along, going back down your chain. 1 single crochet into each stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working along, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of our chain. When you get to the end of your chain, we're going to work into that very last back loop. So 1 single crochet into that very last chain. Just like that. Now chain 1 and turn your work. We're going to be working into this very first stitch right there. So we're always going to do a chain 1 and turn, and we're always going to be working into this very first stitch. So that is how we're going to keep a nice straight edge. And now work your way back. So wrap your yarn and into that very first stitch, 1 half double crochet, and 1 half double crochet into each stitch, working all the way back along our row. So you can pause the video and just keep working along. Half double crochet, 1 into each stitch all the way along, and I will meet you when we get to the end of our row. At the end of our row, our last stitch is a little bit of a hill right here. So we want to work in to that very last stitch at the end of our row. So 1 half double crochet into that last stitch, just like that, and chain 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to be working into this very first stitch right there, always into the first stitch. So wrap your yarn and 1 half double crochet into each stitch, starting in the very first stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working back for this row. 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way along, and I'm going to meet you when we get to the end of this row. At the end of the row, our last stitch is in this hill, just right there. If you have a hard time remembering or looking or identifying the last and first stitches of your rows, you can put a stitch marker into that stitch when you make it, and then you'll see it a little easier. But it's always that one at the hill. I want to make sure we go into the hill at the end of the row. 1 half double crochet. So we've done single crochet and 2 rows of half double, 1 more row of half double. So chain 1 and turn your work. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to work in to the very first stitch right here with 1 half double crochet. And we're going to work in to the last stitch at the end of the row, that one way over on the hill. So pause the video and keep working along. 1 half double crochet into the first stitch and every stitch all the way along your row. And I'll meet you when we get to the end of the row. At the end of our row, we have our hill, always working our last stitch into the last stitch, which is our hill right at the end of the row. So half double crochet into that last stitch, but leave it on your hook. We're not going to finish that last stitch because we're going to be changing colors now. It's time to make our grass. So cut your tail, leaving it long enough to sew in with a needle later. And that finishes our first color. To start your second color or your grass, grab a loop of your grass color and just pop that onto your hook and finish that half double crochet with your new yarn. Just like that. Drop your tail, just pinching it along the back of your work, and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Turn your work. And now we're going to work into the second stitch. So here's our first stitch right here. We're going to skip that stitch. We're going to work into the second stitch right here. So wrap your yarn and into the second stitch. We're going to make a V-stitch. So that is 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet into the same stitch. Just like that. Now we're going to skip 2, 1, and 2, working into the third, we're going to do a V-stitch into the third. So a V-stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet into that same stitch. Wrap your yarn, skip 2 stitches, working into the third, right over there, 1 V-stitch. So 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet, just like that. So skip 2, working into the third, 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet into the same stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working along. A V-stitch into every third stitch all the way along your row, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of our row. At the end of your row, you'll have 2 stitches left, your regular stitch right here, and then that stitch that is on the hill. That'll always be our last stitch of white. So we want to just make our double crochet into that very last stitch, that stitch on the hill. Make sure you get those 2 strands of the stitch on your hook and 1 double crochet to finish, but leave that stitch on your hook. We're going to change colors of yarn. So cut your tail, just leaving it long enough to sew in with a needle, and that finishes our second color. So loop of your flower color on your hook. Just bring that through. Snug your old tail down, just pinching it along the back of your work, and snug your new tail down, so just pinching them along the back, and chain 2. 1 and 2. Turn your work, and now we're going to be working into the center of these V's. So into this very first V, we're going to do a 5 double crochet cluster. So we're going to start our first double crochet, leaving it on our hook. We're going to start our second double crochet, leaving it on our hook, and our third double crochet, leaving it on our hook, our fourth double crochet, leaving it on our hook, and our fifth double crochet, leaving that on our hook. So we have 6 loops of yarn on our hook. Wrap your yarn, hold right where that last double crochet is to kind of pull that down. Turn your hook so your hook is facing the bottom of your stitches, and slide that hook through all of your stitches, just like that, and chain 2. 1 and 2. Into the center of the next V, we're going to do the same thing. So start 5 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 6 loops of yarn on our hook, pinching that last pair of stitches just to kind of pull them down and get a nice shape underneath your hook. Wrap your yarn, turn your hook towards yourself, and pull through all of those stitches, and chain 2. 1 and 2. So we're going to do that into each of these V's all the way along. So starting 5 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, leaving those on your hook, pinching right underneath those last stitches that we made to make them a nice size. Wrap your yarn, turn your hook towards yourself, and slide it through all of those loops, and chain 2. 1 and 2. So you can pause the video and keep working along, doing a 5 double crochet cluster into each of these V stitches all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of your row. Are you enjoying yourself? Go ahead and hit this button under this video right now so you don't miss out on any more fun content just like this. After your last tulip or your last cluster, do the same chain 2 that we've always done. And now we're going to go in to the top of that chain right here. And we're going to end with a single crochet. So slide your hook into the top of that chain, 2 strands of the chain on the top of your hook, and 1 single crochet to finish, but we're not going to finish that stitch. We're going to leave it on our hook. So go ahead, cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later, and that finishes our 3rd color. So now this will be the repeat. Grab your neutral color or your white, long enough tail to sew in later, pop that onto your hook, bring it through, drop your tail, just holding it along the back of your work, and chain 1. Turn your work, and into this very first stitch right here, we're going to do a single crochet. So right into that stitch. 1 single crochet, and 1 single crochet into this space right there. 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet into the tulip. So we're looking for this chain we made right here on the side of our tulip. We're going to make 1 single crochet into this space or into this stitch, 1 single crochet, and now into the space between our tulips, 2 single crochets. 1 and 2. Into that stitch at the top of our tulip, right here, that is 1 single crochet. and 2 into the space in between. 1 and 2. So 1 into the tulip and 2 into the spaces. 1 and 2. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 single crochet into the tulip and 2 single crochets into the space between, all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of your row. If you're enjoying this video, hit that thumbs up. At the end of your row, make your single crochet into your tulip where we normally would. So 1 single crochet into the tulip, and now we're going to do 1 single crochet into the chain. So just into the chain right here, 1 single crochet. So pop your hook in, 2 strands of that stitch on the top of your hook, 1 single crochet to finish, and chain 1. Turn your work, and don't worry if it looks all funny. It will straighten out as we move along. Now we're going to do the same thing we did down here. So 3 rows of half double crochet starting into that very first stitch right here. So half double crochet, 1 into each stitch all the way along your row. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of our row. At the end of your row, 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. Chain 1 and turn your work. Wrap your yarn and into that very first stitch right here, 1 half double crochet. And you can pause the video, keep working along, 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of our row. At the end of your row, your last half double crochet into that stitch on the hill, the last one on the side, 1 half double crochet. Chain 1 and turn your work. Wrap your yarn, 1 half double crochet into that very first stitch, and 1 half double crochet into each stitch all the way along. You can pause the video and I'll meet you when you get to the end of your row. At the end of your row, remember to work into that stitch on the hill. 2 strands on your hook for your last half double crochet, but leave that stitch on your hook. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. And that finishes our repeat for the white, or our neutral color. So 1 row of single crochet and 3 rows of half double. Now we're going to do our grass. So grab your grass color or your green and bring it through those loops on your hook. Drop both of your tails and just hold them along the back of your work. And chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And turn your work. Now we're going to skip our first stitch right there. We're going to work into the second stitch. Into the second stitch, we're going to do a V-stitch. So a V-stitch is 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet. Just like that. Wrap your yarn, skip 2 stitches into the third, another V-stitch of 1 double crochet, chain 1, and 1 double crochet. So pause the video and keep working along, a V-stitch into every third stitch all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of your row. At the end of your row, you can just go back and count how many flowers you did or how many tulips you made in your first row. So I have 6 for mine, but go ahead and count yours. For my big blanket, I have 38. And then go ahead and just count how many V-stitches you have. Make sure it's the same number that you started with. If it is off a little bit, you don't have to worry about frogging your work. Just make sure you have the right number of V-stitches. Even if you put them closer together or space them out a tiny bit, you can fudge a little bit, especially if you're new and you don't want to rip your stitches out or rip it, frog your work. you can just make sure you have the same number of V's that you have tulips for when you began your blanket. Ideally, it ends up like this, 2 stitches left. We're going to do our last double crochet into this last stitch on the hill on the edge of our blanket. So 1 double crochet to finish, but we're going to leave it on our hook. So 1 double crochet, leaving those last 2 stitches. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later, and that finishes our grass repeat. Now to do your tulips, loop of your tulip color on your hook, bring it through, drop your tail, just holding those tails along the back of your work, and chain 2. 1, 2. So we always start the tulips with a chain 2. Tulips, chain 2. Turn your work, and into the center of each V, we're going to do our tulip, or our 5 double crochet clusters. So start your tulip stitch. So 5 double crochets, you're going to start them into that first V stitch, but leaving them on your hook. So there's 3, 4, and 5. Grab those stitches right underneath where you have them on your hook. Grab your yarn, turn your hook towards yourself, pulling with your thumb to get some space, and chain 2. 1, 2. So you can pause the video and do a tulip stitch into each of these spaces all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of your row. After your last cluster stitch, or your last tulip, do your chain 2, and we're going to single crochet into that chain to finish it off. So just into that very first chain, or that top chain, just pop your hook in. You want to have 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook, and 1 single crochet to finish, but leave it on your hook. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later, and that finishes our tulips. Now to do our neutral stripe, grab your neutral color, your white, and pop it onto your hook, just a loop long enough tail to sew in later. Bring it through, drop both tails, just pinching them along the back of your work, and chain 1. Turn your work, 1 single crochet into the very first stitch, right here, 1 single crochet. It doesn't even look like a stitch, but we're going to put a stitch there. 1 single crochet into the space, and now we're going to work along 1 single crochet into the tulip, and 2 single crochets into the space between the tulips, all the way along, just single crochets. So 1 into your tulip, and 2 into the space. 1 and 2. So now you can pause the video, keep working along. I'll meet you at the end of this row. At the end of your row, single crochet into your tulip, and single crochet into your chain. 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook, 1 single crochet. We're going to finish this stitch, and now you're going to chain 1 and turn your work, go back and do your 3 rows of half double crochets, and then start your leaves again, start your tulips, start your single crochet, your 3 rows of half double, and just keep working along until your blanket is the size you want it to be. When your blanket is the size you want it to be, you want to go back and knot your tails, just to make sure they don't go anywhere. You can sew them in without knotting them if you like. I just like to be extra sure. So I give them a snug little knot, each of them, and I try to bring up my white to match where my green is. So I don't bring my green down and tie it here. I kind of try to bring my white up to where my green is, if that makes sense. I kind of hold it this way to get that knot as close to the green as I can. Just like that, and then go ahead and sew in your tails, just matching the colors. So white into white, green into green, and tulip color into tulip color all the way along. And I'll meet you back for the border. So when you've finished your last row of half double crochet and your blanket is the height you want it to be, you've sewn in your tails, we are ready to put on a cute little border just to tidy up this edge a little bit on the side of our blanket. So rotate your work a little bit. We're going to be working in to this side, so the back of our blanket, and we're going to start by going down the side. So chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to work in to this spot right here. So pop your hook in and 1 single crochet, chain 2, and now we're going to work into this spot right here, 1 single crochet, chain 2. We're going to skip all of our flower business and we're going to work into this spot right here. So we're always just going to be working into our neutral color. We don't want to mess up our flowers. 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into this spot right here, 1 single crochet, chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to work into the white again, the neutral, 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into the white. So I'm just going to pop my hook in right down there into the white, 1 single crochet, chain 2, into this spot down there. So I'm skipping these 2 rows, working into the second, or that space, 1 single crochet, chain 2, and working into the white right before the flower, 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into the white right after the flower, 1 single crochet, chain 2, skipping those 2 rows, working into that spot right there, 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into the white before the flower, 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into the spot after the flower, 1 single crochet, chain 2, working into the middle. You can work anywhere into the white. I picked this spot down there. You can pick whichever spot you like. We want to go into the white when the white starts, the white in the middle, and the white when it finishes, chain 2 and skipping over to the next set of white. So you can pause the video and keep working along. Don't worry if yours is curled up and it looks really tight. It will stretch out and just help keep our blanket in shape after we do the next round. So keep going all the way down and I'll meet you when we get to the corner. When you get closer to your corner, do your usual single crochet and chain 2. And now into that corner, you want 2 strands of whatever stitch on your hook and make 1 single crochet, chain 2, 1, 2, rotate your work a little bit so we can start working along the bottom of our blanket, back into the same stitch, 1 single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, so we're skipping 1, 2, working into the third, 1 single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, working into the third, 1 single crochet, and now you can pause the video and keep working along, chaining 2 and skipping 2, 1 single crochet into the third stitch, all the way along, and I'll meet you at the end of this row. At the end of your row, just work into that corner chain, or that corner stitch, do your 1 single crochet, chain 2, and 1 single crochet into that same stitch just to make our new corner for our border. Rotate your work so we can work along our new side, chain 2, 1, 2, and now go somewhere into the middle of this row, or the middle of our white. So I'm just going to pop my hook into the middle with our single crochet, chain 2, into the last stitch of the white, single crochet, chain 2, skipping over our flower, working into that first stitch of white, 2 strands of that stitch on my hook, 1 single crochet, chain 2 into the middle, anywhere, 1 single crochet, chain 2 into that last stitch of white, 1 single crochet. So you can pause the video and keep working along this side. Single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet into the white. So 3 single crochets into the white, chaining 2 in between everything, including jumping over our flowers, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of this row. When you get to the end of your row, we're just going to do the same thing. So I've done my chain 2 somewhere in the middle of that white. I'll put in my single crochet, chaining 2, and then into the corner stitch, I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet into that same stitch. That's going to make our new corner for our border. Rotate your work, chain 2, 1 and 2, skipping 2 stitches and working into the third with a single crochet. So now you can pause the video and keep working along the top of your blanket, doing a chain 2, skip 2, single crochet into the third, all the way along, and I will meet you when we get to the end of our row. At the end of your row, I'm just going to go into that very last stitch, and that's going to be my corner. So single crochet, chain 2, and now I'm going to slip stitch into this very first chain right there to join up my corner. So into that first chain, or that first stitch I made, slip stitch to finish off our corner. Chain 1 and turn your work. We want to be working in to the pretty side of our tulip, so pretty tulips facing up. And we're going to start in this very first corner space. So into that corner space, 1/2 double crochet, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, and 1/2 double crochet. All into that corner space. Now into this first stitch, our single crochet right there, we are going to slip stitch. So slip stitch to pin down that shell. And into the next space, we're going to do 3 half double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch into this stitch to pin down our shell, a little slip stitch, and 3 half double crochets into the next space. 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch into the stitch. Slip stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 3 half double crochets into each space, like that, and a slip stitch into the stitch, just like that. So pause the video and keep working along, and I will meet you when you get to your first corner. When you get to your corner, slip stitch into that first stitch, slip stitch, wrap your yarn and into that corner space, 1/2 double crochet, and 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, and 1/2 double crochet, all into the same corner space. Now slip stitch into that first stitch, that single crochet, we're going to do a slip stitch. And now along our sides, we're going to do a little bit different just to even out our shells along the edge of our tulip blanket. So into that first space, we're going to do 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, slip stitch into this stitch, so slip stitch, and 2 double crochets into the next space. 1 and 2. Slip stitch into the stitch. Now into our next space, for wherever our flowers are, we're going to start with a half double crochet, 1 half double, 1 double, and 1 half double, all into that space where our flowers are, where our tulips are. Slip stitch into that next stitch to pin that shell down. And now for our white, or our center stitches here, these 2 spaces, we're going to do 2 double crochets, slip stitch, and 2 double crochets, slip stitch. So wrap your yarn, 2 double crochets into that first space, 1 and 2, slip stitch into that stitch, 1 slip stitch, 2 double crochets into the next space, 1 and 2, and slip stitch into the stitch, slip stitch. Into the space where our flowers are, 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, and 1 half double crochet. Slip stitch into that stitch to pin it down, just like that. And now into the 2 spaces in our regular stitches here, we're going to do 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, slip stitch into the stitch, and 2 double crochets into the next space, 1 and 2, and slip stitch into the stitch, slip stitch. Now where our flowers are, we do 1 half double crochet, 1 double crochet, and 1 half double crochet, and slip stitch into that next stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working along, doing 2 double crochets and a slip stitch into the spaces between our flowers. And where our flowers are, we're going to be doing a half double crochet, half double crochet, and slip stitch. Your corners, you're going to do half double crochet, 3 double crochets, half double crochet. So pause the video, keep working around, and I'll meet you when you get back to where we started. Just finish all the way up to your corner, so into that last space, your 2 double crochets along the side, 1 and 2. And now we're going to slip stitch right into the same stitch. Right down there, we're going to slip stitch. So into that same stitch, slip stitch to join, 1 small little slip stitch, and a chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. Sew in your tail, and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed making your blanket as much as I enjoyed making mine. I'm waiting for you in that video right there, and stay hooked.